After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the basic concepts underlying problem solving, know the importance of cross-cultural understanding of formal reasoning and categorization, understand the basic concepts underlying decision making, know the importance of cross-cultural influences on the process of decision making. Cross-cultural influence on problem solving and reasoning. With the reading of previous modules, you are now familiar with the theoretical positions of the cross-cultural psychology and contemporary perspective on culture and cognition. You are also familiar with the impact of cross-cultural influences on the two main facets of the cognition, namely perception and learning and memory. In this module, we discuss the importance of understanding cultural impact on intelligence. Intelligence as such is an extremely vast topic. Hence, we restrict ourselves to three main areas, that is creativity, problem solving and reasoning. On the basis of triarchy model of intelligence, in this chapter we deal mainly with problem solving and reasoning. Problem solving. The APA defines problem solving as a specific problem that moves from an initial state to a goal state by means of set of mental operations. The focus on everyday problem solving has been an important area of research. Problem solving has different facets. It is encountered in schools and everyday surroundings. In schools, problem solving involves tension which arises due to obstacle which prevents goal fulfillment. This is an incentive to proceduralization, factual knowledge which otherwise would remain inert. Mathematics seems to be one of the most prominent areas where problem solving is utilized. Everyday problem solving has been defined as dealing with challenges, obstacles and demands grounded in day-to-day context, activities, goals and relationship of the individuals. This definition emphasizes the importance of other people and their impact. Keeping this in mind, culture assumes an importance in researching everyday problem solving, general steps involved in the problem solving, physiological basis. As such, problem solving is a huge topic with various subdivisions. It is involved in mathematical skills, formal reasonings and many more such important day-to-day functions. In the subtopic, we proceed to describe the physiological differences involved in the process of number processing in different cultures. One example of such research is done by Tang, who compared brain activation of Chinese and English speaking students during addition and magnitude comparison. It was found that English speakers typically recruited left perisylvian cortex and Broca's area, whereas Chinese speakers used parietal visuomotor association network. Thus, we see that different cultures utilizes different methods to visualize problems, leading to activation of different areas of the brain. Problem solving and giftedness. As formerly mentioned, problem solving is an important aspect of everyday life. Since it is crucial pedagogic strategy, it forms a close association with the conception of giftedness. This is an added advantage as the research indicates that cultural as well as linguistic differences of intelligence and giftedness can be minimized when using simple problems. The fact that problem solving is an integral part of intelligence is very well known. Howard Gardner in 1983 states that intelligence or human intellectual competence must entail a set of problem solving, enabling the individual to resolve genuine problems or difficulties that he or she encounters and when appropriate. To create an effective products and must also entails the potential for finding or creating problems, thereby laying the groundwork for acquisition of new language. Thus, this theory, while focusing on intelligence, does include the importance of application of this intelligence to solving problems within cultural context. Giftedness can therefore be defined as the ability to solve complex problems in an effective, efficient, elegant and economic ways. Cross-cultural influences on problem solving and reasoning. Problem solving involves higher cognitive abilities in which logical inferences about analysis of information and perception of relationships among them. Mathematical problem solving requires reasoning ability. Because of perceived differences in mathematical skills across culture, a lot of research has been carried out. In this section, we will try to understand the manner in which the cultural influences problem solving under the following subheadings. First, formal reasoning. Second, Sylgostic reasoning, and third is categorization. Now we will talk about the first, formal reasoning. Problem solving refers to the process of which we attempt to discover ways of achieving goals that do not seem readily attainable. Psychologists have tried to isolate the process of problem solving by asking people of different cultures to solve unfamiliar problems in artificial settings. One such example is formal reasoning. Formal reasoning involves drawing conclusions based solely on the given information or premises. Many psychologists and philosophers have assumed that such processes underlying the kind of reasoning and thinking that occur frequently. A research done by Cole studied that the relation between Libyans and Americans while solving logical problems which needed operations on machinery. Americans outperformed Libyans. However, this lackluster performance by Libyans was not attributed to cultural differences but lack of familiarity. Later, it was concluded that Libyans' ability to reason logically to problem is dependent on the context of the problem. When offered with the problems with which were familiar to them, the Libyans solved them effortlessly. On the other hand, when the problems were alien to them, they simply did not know where to begin. Similar studies have been done to understand the difference in reasoning between literate and non-literate population. It is claimed that Eastern culture promote numerical ability. For example, both authors found out that Chinese students performed better on simple addition tests than American students. It is seen that direct retrieval and decomposition are the common strategies used by Chinese children, whereas American used counting. These differences are accounted by differences in parietal skills and socialization. Such socialization differences have also been observed in reasoning. Schooling has an observational effect on problem solving as well. Beninese students performed better after schooling as compared to previous results. However, differences in reasoning in different cultures have also been seen which have no connection whatsoever with schooling as indicated by research carried out by Nisbet and his colleagues. For example, content effects in formal reasoning tasks were found to be greater for Koreans than for Americans. Chinese and Korean university students used more intuitive strategies of reasoning compared with European Americans university students who relied more on formal reasoning strategies. Nisbet and Norenzian concluded that these differences may be attributed to the holistic versus analytic nature of processing of information in the Eastern and Western culture respectively. They also emphasize on the differences arising due to industrialization, contractual relations and formalization of knowledge. Now we will talk about Sylgostic reasoning. Sylgostic reasoning is an area of research sensitive to cultural influences. Sylgostic reasoning is concerned with logical truth instead of empirical truth. Logical truth are based on comprehensions and inferences, whereas empirical truth are based on own experiences and testimony of others. Examples of syllogistic reasoning have been depicted. Luria, a student of Vygotsky, conducted extensive studies on Central and East Asian tribal and nomadic people. He documented that there are remarkable differences in the way that these people approach problems. He found out that the effect of schooling was observed clearly in the respondent when dealing with verbal problems. It was observed that illiterate people encountered difficulty in answering Sylgostic questions dealing with unfamiliar items. Luria says that non-illiterate farmers in the Central Asia faced three limitations. First, they had difficulty in accepting premises which were contradictory to their own experiences. Second, they refused to treat general premises as general and thus did not include these in reasoning. Third, they were unable to see different problems as a part of single premise, rather they considered these as premises independent of one another. Apparently, thus one problem with Sylgostic reasoning and non-illiterate people is their inability or unwillingness to remain within the boundaries of problem. Such people have higher tendency of omitting, adding or altering premises so that they could use personal knowledge. Luria in 1976 concluded that illiterate people think differently than literate people, implying that logical reasoning is an artificial construct. However, this is an incorrect assumption. As seen previously, Scribner demonstrated that problems that non-literate people faced. He tried to find the difficulties that hindered the understanding of verbal problems. It was found that they were unable or unwilling to apply scientific principles to verbal Sylgostic problems. However, this was not due to their inability to reason logically. Rather, they simply could not understand the hypothetical nature of verbal problems or view them with the same degree of importance. Schooled individuals have the experience of being questioned by authority figures that already have the answers. Uneducated people, on the other hand, used to answering questions simply as a mean of providing information, are unable to grasp this idea. Now, we talk about categorization. Categorization is one of the basic mental activities wherein people group things together into categories based on perceived similarities and provide label to them. It is often seen that people tend to decide whether something belongs to a particular group by comparing it with the group's most representative member. Some categories are universally applicable across culture. Facial expressions representing basic human emotions like fear, happiness, sadness, etc. are universally categorized. Similarly, primary and secondary colors are also an example. Selecting and remembering colors seem to be culture and language independent. People across cultures are physiologically predisposed to categorize shapes into basic forms. However, research indicates clear cultural differences. Malt, reviewing the folk classification of plants and animals, found that the classification corresponds to the Western system of classification so long as the plant and animals were insignificant. For example, Diamond found that 4 people made discriminating groups of birds but grouped all the butterflies together even in presence of clear perceptual differences. Nisbet and his colleagues have tried to find the basis behind the claim such as Eastern culture is holistic, more influenced by contextual elements, dialectic resolution, whereas Western culture is more analytic, relying on formal rule-based reasoning. One of the most important research is done by Chu, in which he concluded that Chinese students were more likely to categorize objects based on shared relationship with their American counterparts who relied on similarities to categorize objects. This is evident in the fact that Chinese students used relational contextualization, categorization, whereas American children used descriptive, analytical, inferential, categorical and descriptive whole organization. Also, Chinese adults were equally likely to categorize objects based on similarities and relationships. The Americans were more predisposed to categorize on the basis of similarities. This helps us to suggest that differences in categorization styles are likely to be reflected in differential semantic activation. Semantic memory is categorized by highly interconnected network structure, including mechanism by which related concepts activate each other. It is well known that semantic memory is strongly affected by experiences. Therefore, information which is well learned will be strongly represented and activate more readily than information which is less readily learned. Keeping this in mind, we can infer from Chu's 1972 finding that semantic representation based on relational information is more common than categorical information in Chinese students. This suggests that when Chinese students activate a concept, activation should spread more rapidly to other concepts activated by the way of relationship than category knowledge. In opposition, the American students activate semantic representation based on knowledge than relational information. Stereotyping is a special kind of categorization involving people. Culture play a role in the process of stereotyping through the use of cultural fillers, which colors people's interpretation of the world around them. Culture also plays a role in the maintenance and reinforcement of stereotypes. All the processes of problem solving and reasoning are used in everyday situations. One of the most important uses of this is making decisions. Decision making is a crucial activity that we undertake in daily life. We will discuss this aspect in next section. Decision making. So the basic concept of decision making. The APA defines decision making as the process of choosing between alternatives, selecting or rejecting available options. It is an extremely important activity undertaken by the individuals for small as well as big choices faced by them. The steps involved in decision making are shown in the figure. Decision making involves information to confirm a solution, finding conclusions about representatives of an event to a prototype, making judgments based on what comes to mind first, comparing information gathered to the standard information available, and finally deciding on the positive or negative results of the event. Collaboration. In today's time, the boundaries between different countries are fast getting blurred. There is thus a need for collaborative working. Collaboration means teamwork or group effort. Recently, the researchers in the field of psychology have started to examine how multiple forms of collaboration add to our understanding of problem solving and reasoning. Till date, most of the research done in this topic indicate that collaboration improves the process of decision making. For example, in the series of studies conducted by Dixon and Gould in 1998, it was seen that the participants were able to recall information better in a collaboration than individual. Collaboration is seen in everyday setting. For example, a married couple collaborates with each other, families work in harmony with each other and distribute work and so on. For instance, Leopold and Helgsgen in 1998 found that men suffering from prostate cancer reported less anxiety and depression when they could discuss their treatment options with their wives. This transpired in better decision making as well. Differences in culture can be seen affecting collaboration as well. In societies with highly differentiated work spheres for men and women, there is not much collaboration observed. Due to division of labor, each individual is specialized to perform a certain task. Such differentiation can also be observed in parent-child relationship, where information flows in only one direction. Thus, collaboration may be viewed differently by different cultures. In general, it is seen more in collectivist culture than individualistic culture. Cross-cultural influences on decision making. Cross-cultural processing of the decision-making process suggests that there both are similarities and differences. They may use the same strategies but differ in the relative importance they accord to the various processes and their precise demonstration. For example, individualistic culture may believe in formulating a hypothesis and then testing all the possibilities, but collectivist culture, which are high on risk avoidance, tends to decide on the alternative more representative of the problem. A study conducted by Park and Ye in 2003 is one of the most widely known conducted studies in this aspect. 800 students from 5 countries, Korea, Japan, China, United States and Canada, showed differences in the decision-making process. Korean students showed high level of cooperative decision-making, whereas Japan shows the least. This research was seen reflecting the changing dynamics of the culture in modern times. Research also indicates that cultural differences are seen in thinking process and reasoning in negotiations. Important aspect of decision making, especially in the corporate sector. There are two distinct modes of processing information. First, analytical rational mode. Second, intuitive experimental mode. Negotiators in the individualistic culture, which focus on personal autonomy, tend to use the analytical rational approach, wherein they apply logic and deductive reasoning in the form of development of positions, use of logical argumentations and presentation of facts. Negotiators in the collectivist culture, on the other hand, rely on intuitive experimental modes which focus on emotions, presentation of concrete personal stories and metaphors. They apply to goodwill of others while logical arguments are strictly avoided. Thus, we see how the different cultures influences the perception of problems and thus different strategies for reasoning thus in turn influence the decision making process. Now, the summary of the module. Intelligence is defined as the global capacity to profit from the experience and to go beyond given information about the environment. Problem solving is defined as thinking that is directed towards solving specific problems and the moves from the initial state to a goal state by means of a set of mental operations. Problem solving has different facets. It is encountered in schools and everyday surroundings. In school, problem solving involves tensions which arises due to obstacles which prevent goal fulfillment. Everyday problem solving has been defined as dealing with challenges, obstacles and demands grounded in day-to-day context, activities, goals and relationship of the individual. Howard Gardner's theory of intelligence establishes a close association of intelligence with problem solving. Giftedness can therefore be defined as the ability to solve complex problems in an effective, efficient, elegant and economic ways. Cross-cultural influences on problem solving have been clearly observed in formal reasoning, Sylgostic reasoning and categorization. Formal reasoning involves drawing conclusions based solely on the given information or premises. Sylgostic reasoning is a part of deductive reasoning, where inferences are drawn from the data. Categorization is one of the basic mental activities wherein people group things together into categories based on perceived similarities and provide labels to them. Decision making is defined as the process of choosing between alternatives, selecting or rejecting available options. Collaboration means teamwork or group efforts, and clear influences of culture are easily observed on the process of decision making.